I am Joshua K. Sabra, Esquire, and he is Dr. Miles Salisbury. And you are listening to the Miles Ahead podcast, where we share tactics, techniques, and protocol to improve your physical, mental, and spiritual health while you walk the path of the warrior. Stay tuned. In today's episode of the Miles Ahead podcast, Dr. Miles and I discuss the epidemic, because everything is an epidemic, the epidemic of hopelessness that people can feel in America, some definitions of hope pulled from a variety of sources, and how you can combat the sense of hopelessness in your life and in your community with some more powerful definitions and some new tools. Stay tuned. Oh, yeah.
And we are back.
Happy post 4th of July.
Yes, sir. It's quite hot.
Did you go to the St. Paul rodeo, or did you see a bald eagle fly?
I was not that lucky. Like our friend John, we got to experience these American phenomena.
Yeah, I took the day off. I sat in my air-conditioned apartment with my girlfriend and watched Wayne's World, the original, which is amazing and holds up quite nicely, and didn't leave the house. It was a really quiet weekend for Coach Josh.
Till the fireworks started and you couldn't sleep. You probably slept through that deployment.
I think I passed out while the sun was still up. Yeah, I have no recollection of fireworks. I'm tucked in the Waluga neighborhood, and it's shady and perfect.
My house was like a war zone, was going off till like 1 a.m.
Yeah, Westland's much different.
Yeah, the river, people were shooting stuff off the boat, so it was intense.
So the river people
shooting off their fireworks, but it was cool, free fireworks show, because we're on elevation, so we had a nice view.
Nice.
And they were like about 10:30. It's like, okay, you can stop now. And then just kept going to like 1. So it was an earplugs night.
Well, yeah, that sounds right. Well, good. You got the real 4th of July experience.
True. Yep.
What are you listening to today?
I found a cool band called Island. Yeah, really good. Never heard of them. I was working out at a buddy's house last week, and it came out as playlist. Really good. I think the song that we're listening to is called Brother, I believe. We'll link to it, or just the band in general. I don't know where they're from and who they are, but they're amazing.
Island. Yeah, I'm can't wait to check that out. It sounds relaxing.
Yeah, it's hard to explain their sound, but it's good. It's really good.
Gorgeous. I love it. Let's check out Island. I've been back on the metal kick, so I've just been listening to Soundgarden and Iron Maiden, and just sort of a playlist of stuff that gets me fired up. Yeah, but I want to shift gears. I want to slow down. I think I'm going to pick up on some country if I can.
There you
go. Yeah. So we've survived 4th of July. It is July 8th, and I've been wanting to do this episode for a little while, ever since I heard about hope as a psychological concept. And Brene Brown, on another podcast, I think she was on the Pivot podcast, she kind of tossed it out offhandedly as something that she was really curious about, and she broke it down into 3 pieces, which is goal, pathway, and agency. Those are the 3 components that she framed it. So through the research of one of her colleagues, but I was really excited. I love definitions of things. I love breaking things down. And since where the real epidemic is this epidemic of hopelessness that's been going on since before the pandemic, but it's certainly palpable. There's a lot of economic statistics, a lot of social statistics that support this sense of lack of purpose, lack of cohesion, lack of community, lack of identity that people are suffering from. And what better place to break it down than the Miles Ahead podcast?
So easy.
Yeah. So simple. But I think this is topical because we've talked a lot about the mental health epidemic, and this piggybacks on some of those components that we were talking about, because of the way that our struggles shape our who we think we are and where we think we're going. It's a lot of what hope implies, because our sense of agency, how much control we believe we have over ourselves and our environment, is a big part of hope. And it's something that is, I think a lot of people feel the texture, or there's a palpable like feeling of, what's this word that you use sometimes, starts with an M, Malu, Maru, something.
You having a stroke?
Yeah, exactly. I might be, but there's a sense of malaise. Sure. Well, yes, we'll start with that. I'll have two of those. There's this feeling of malaise that is becoming really, I felt it. Of course, I think every human has, but it's becoming expected. It's like a certain level of loss of hope and general shittiness that is just become expected in a lot of places. Certainly the internet, but even in yeah,
of course,
conversations in our communities. Does that mirror your experience, or how does that strike you?
That seems accurate.
As a generalization.
It is a generalization. Yeah, it's a weird time to be alive. Like nothing's the way it was. Really, it's a transitional period. A little chaotic.
That's right. Some statistics. The opportunities are many. So in some ways, the internet has liberated labor, because we can now work remotely. We can now do hybrid employment. We have more options as parents. We have options to work. That doesn't necessarily mean our careers are better off, or our families are better off, but we do have options. The economics are such that they're shifting. Used to be it was expected that the man would be the head of household at least 40 or 50 years ago, but now women under 30 are more likely, or women are more likely to own their own home by the age of 30 than men. In metro areas, women out earn men. Women have been graduating from college a lot more than men for the last 20 years anyway. So there's been a balancing of the economics, which has had a unique strain on relationships. Women are more likely to serve divorce paperwork to their partner, and they're 71% more likely to in 70% of divorce rates, or divorce cases, women are the people who decide to serve their paperwork, regardless of the dynamics. Who knows what's really going on in there? But women serve more paperwork, and if women out earn their partner, they are 90% likely to submit their paperwork. So divorces are happening more or less frequently. I don't know if it's more or at a greater rate, but certainly women have a lot more options than they have had in the
past.
Ever. Yeah, easily. You could just say that ever. So
unless you're talking about Wonder Woman and the Amazonian people.
That's right. A mythical land. So there's a lot of good things. There's some interesting, societal and social conflict that needs to be teased apart.
Yeah.
But in general, because we don't have the same struggles, to your point, we did a while ago. Now, common goals we have less common goals. We have less common struggles. Like people in different socioeconomic classes have different types of struggles, and but the crisis of purpose in community is sort of felt across class and race and And, you know, most of identity groups in the US, I think, have some sort of, you know, challenge with defining purpose and meaning for their lives.
Mhm.
Again, just some broad brushes. This is not an economics podcast, so if I got one of those percentages wrong, don't comment or write in. I don't care. I'm pulling from a lot of different data banks, but the thing that we can all feel is that things are changing. A lot of it's for the good. There's some unintended consequences, just like the internet. A lot of good, also some unintended consequences. Some things that we might go back and do differently if we had to do it again. But here we are. So it used to be our primary struggle was, finding a mate, having children, fighting wars. Now our primary struggle is, uh, do I want to be a homeowner or not? Do I want to have kids or not? Can I find a mate with my values in my part of the world, part of the United States? These are questions that people are, asking themselves and, publicly
Mhm.
and they're writing books about it these
Mhm.
days.
Causes problems. There's some luxury to that too, though, right? Like we're moving up the scale of self-actualization. The fact that we can do that, there's some good things, but it's going to cause some problems and some pain points for sure.
100%. And you use the word luxury. People use the word first world problems as though it's I don't think, I mean, that that's not diminishing those problems. It's just with this the first world, these are our problems. We're going to figure out how to paint our masterpiece. We're not trying to, kill a buffalo and skin it and eat for the winter. And in most cases,
Yeah.
again, and we're heavily generalizing. Um, you know, and we're gonna get into the class by class, part of this because there's some fun stuff. I am very blessed. I find friction is a big blessing in my life. So I'm lucky in that I have some clarity. And we were just talking before the um, pod started about just goals in general and how we relate to them. And I asked you if you had any. You said, I've got some ideas, not real clear goals. And I have to discard goals. Like I have so many that I have to no, I got to stop worrying about that. Can't put that on the whiteboard or the vision board anymore. And, we have different personalities and different experiences. And I think that so much of this hope conversation is figuring out where in that pathway, where in that process you get derailed. Because I've been derailed on all of them. I've had the experience of felt loss of agency, felt loss of goals, or no clear goals for a variety of reasons, and then pathway problems. And I don't know if it's the same for you, but I feel like that's the human condition,
Yeah.
and to some extent.
Mhm.
So let's talk a little bit about some definitions. And so you said you looked up some things on hope. Tell me what you found.
So basic Webster's dictionary. We'll start there. Obviously, an easy one. A feeling of a expectation and desire for a certain thing to happen. Kind of a duh. But a secondary one was better. A feeling of trust or to expect within confidence that something will happen. And then it said its opposite was despair, which definitely fits. Then went biblical, the confident expectation of what God has promised and its strength from his faithfulness. In the spiritual realm, an expectation and anticipation that rests in what we believe. So it's a lot of crossover. And then in my realm, there are a bunch of people that do like hope research actually, and there's a guy named Dr. Rick Snyder. It was on the APA website, and there was an article from Ashley Abramson in 1/1/24 called "Hope as an Antidote." And they're talking about hope being linked in optimism. It's more of an attitude or outlook that good things will happen and one's wishes or aims will ultimately be fulfilled. Dr. Snyder says he defines it as the perceived capability to derive pathways to desired goals and to motivate oneself via agency thinking to use these pathways. And you already brought up the word agency. So he's already kind of talking about that. It's sort of different than optimism, which is simply the expectation of a better future. Hope is an action-oriented and a skill set. Hope is action-oriented and a skill set that can be learned. As another doctor named Dr. Hellman, who notes, we often use hope in place of wishing, as in, I hope it's sunny, or I hope you're doing well. But wishing is passive toward a goal, and hope is more about taking action towards the goal. So there's like an action component.
Well, you said a lot, and I like all of that. But let's pull out. I want to pull out, just for simplicity's sake, the Bible, the biblical
Definition.
definition, because it kind of encompasses in a really simple way what people are thinking when they have hope. And read it again.
The confident expectation of what God has promised and its strength in his faithfulness.
So in this, if you broke that down into pieces, the goal, the pathway, and the agency, the they have confidence that they are deserving and will get what they want because of their faith in God. Well, God's the pathway and the agency, and provides assistance to the agency, and the goal. Well, whether it's for a bountiful crop or to have robust children or whatever the goal is in that case, it is accessible, and therefore they're permitting themselves to have a goal. And whether it's through their own faith or God's will, or combination of thereof, and it's the Bible, so who knows the literal interpretation, but that's a simple, I want something, I deserve it, and in the very simplified, because God's providing it, I have the power and the path.
I'm worthy of having it. Yeah.
So that's such a great way to it was simple. And like, by simple, I mean, if the majesty of the Lord Almighty is involved, then it solves a bunch of the problems of the how and the when and the why and the what, right? Right?
Give it up to God.
That's right. Give it up to God.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing I would point out is that the goal, when people have goals, there are several problems that pull a goal out of reach. And before you even get started on the pathway part of it, but the goal, things that make goals problems are sense of deserving, right? There's a worthiness aspect. And because we have a morality, or we have these imprints of stories around our desires and why they're good or bad, and who we would have to be to get them. When the reality is a BMW is agnostic about who drives it, right? There is no good or bad, person who's willing to do what it takes. It's just, are you willing to do what it takes? But we put that on the goal. So we judge ourselves and we judge our goals, right, with some rubric that we may not even be conscious of. And we also, depending on our reference points, we may not even know what is really possible, like what things can occur. And that's okay. But I think about, goals as we'll not get into what I think about goals just yet, but the goals are, I think it's good to have a fuzzy view of what you're trying to create. I know that's against goal literature. Like, you have to have it crystal clear. I'm going to have a house with mahogany floors and rich maple wood bookshelves and leather bound books.
They all start fuzzy anyways.
Yeah. But I think you can have a fuzzy perspective on your goals. And it's that's a fine place to start. If you're, I think most of the time, if people are honest, they have goals, but I've judged them as too lofty or as some level of worthiness.
Mm-hmm.
And a goal can just be to get out of pain. Like a bunch of what you don't want can make a clear goal.
Yeah, pain motivation.
Yeah, my house is on fire. I don't want to live here
I
anymore.
have a goal to leave my house and not burn.
Exactly.
Quick goal.
So the contrast can create clarity on goals. So what's the opposite of what you want? Well, I don't want to starve to death. Okay, so you want some financial security. You want some measure of a sense that you're going to be okay, even if you took a day off work.
Hence where hope starts springing in.
And this is so there's problems, there's built-in problems with goals, regardless of what else is going on. And then you layer on pathway problems. Now, the pathway problem is I think the most obvious thing that is I think that's the thing that people can feel the most in their lives, because pathways are built on reference points from the past, because the present is emergent. We don't really know how we're going to get to our business goals. We have goals and we're working on them, but it's an ongoing thing. But right now, if you just look at whether it's the cost of college tuition or gasoline or eggs or a house, a lot of the things that people take for granted as like basic goals that, you have to live a middle-class life. And that's being super general here. Not everybody has these goals, but people get a little bit hopeless when you can just with a pen and a piece of paper, you can start to see how obviously challenging it will be to do the same thing that you were doing 10 years ago to get this to that same goal, right? If the average cost of a mortgage doubled in the United States, which it has in the last 5 years, just that alone is going to make your equation and your pathway strained.
Mm-hmm.
And there's lots of creative ways to do things, but human beings we like to find the cheese at the end of the maze in the fastest way possible. And the more pivot points in the plan, the more creativity that is required and the more determination. And so just because the context shifts around our goals, that can challenge the pathway. And that's a financial goal, like, for a home, but the same thing applies to physical goals. Like if you get an injury or if you get, a setback of some kind, these interrupt the pathway, and that can diminish your belief in the goal. Mm-hmm. And that infects your
start despairing.
Yeah. Your process for hope.
Mm-hmm.
That's absolutely right. So pathways can get threatened. The goals we can judge. And I think the biggest one in the agency piece, you mentioned a couple times in a couple of those definitions. We talked a little bit about it in the mental health episodes, but what is you rattled off a bunch of them before we started. So I want to revisit your personal definition of agency, or if you have one, clinical. But how would you define agency?
It's a tough one. I've written a lot about what hope meant to me, but when you were asking me earlier about agency, I hadn't thought a lot on it. But I think it just comes down to your personal power. Do you feel like you have what it takes to do X, Y, or Z? Do you have the resources to get it done? And like I was saying before, everything goes back to attachment. It always goes back to your family. And, it's cliche, but there's a lot of truth to it. If you didn't get trained to have a self or believe in yourself, you can learn helplessness, and you're not going to have a lot of agency, or you think you don't have a lot of agency. Or you were in a house where you had to take care of everybody else and you never learned to take care of yourself. So you have agency with other people, and then codependency starts. So it's kind of a false agency. Then when you're by yourself, you're like, who am I? What am I doing? And I've got to find someone to tell me what to do. So that's not the best either. But it's probably your self-belief as determined by past behaviors and things you have done, as determined by your parents helping you to cultivate that self-belief. You're a worthy human. I love you because you exist, not because you do X, Y, and Z things. Those X, Y, and Z things you do spring from the qualities you were born with. That should be what's reinforced to kids, not, oh, I love you because you got an A in your test. And then kids start going, oh, I get loved for A's, not because, oh, I was industrious and put some hard work in and I was effortful. Like that should be praised, not the end goal. That's just gravy. So that can get in the way. A lot of things can get in the way with agency. When I was thinking on hope, though, it's sort of like you see a possibility of things changing, maybe for the better. For me, it's usually, and in the work I do, it's usually you're in despair, you're in the pit, and hope is the thing that like maybe I can get out of this shithole. Maybe I can start feeling better. Maybe I can get out of this darkness. And even that thought, like that, like negativity lifts even a little bit. That feeling right there is a spark of hope. That's a different feeling, and we want that. You can get an increase in energy, movement, action, and you might start taking more steps towards the goal. You might start to feel better. Some healing may occur, some change and growth. And then you want to find and cultivate what gets you to the goal of change, which is, in this example, psychotherapy, reading, journaling, retreats, something with a felt sense experience, psychedelics, whatever feels right. So those are like the tactics and strategies to go towards your goal of what you hope to change. Like what the opposite of what I'm feeling now is despair. I don't want to feel this way. What do I need to do to feel better? I hope I can do that. Oh, there's some tactics and strategies I can use, which is the ones I just outlined with psychotherapy and such. But a lot of times you can get derailed because it's like, oh, let me just reach for a substance or some porn or something that makes you check out. That'll make me feel good, but only acutely. And then it just makes things even worse. And it doesn't really feel good to grow when you start, talk about pathway problems. Like it's going to get dark a little bit. Like along the way, you're going to feel some like spurts of like, this is amazing and feel so much better. And then when you go down to Hades to find some shit that you lost and you start letting out those emotions that you've like clogged up in your system, that's a lot of pain. And so that's where like people dip out. Like, no, I'll just go back to the old thing. This is too much. And that's where hope often fails. It's despair is the only thing. After that, it's seductive to go back to the old shit, the old ways. There are plenty of numbing agents these days, and plenty of distractions, plenty of things to keep us hopeless, even though we're trying to feel better. It's the dumb thing about it as humans. Like we're just trying to feel better. That, in fact, is a sign of wisdom. Like I'm reaching for a substance. Yeah, but I'm trying to feel better. So that's actually good. It's just the wrong fucking tool. You should feel good about that in a way. Like, hey, you're trying to make yourself feel better. It's like a double-edged sword, though. So you're going to hurt yourself. You're going to bleed out. So using the other things, leveraging the tactics and strategies you've found, like a good therapist or coach, psychedelics, something with a felt sense experience. That's really such a game changer. Like talk therapy works, but then when you actually do something, shifts a felt sense, like some somatic work or an ayahuasca retreat or whatever it is, something experiential, a retreat, that can really take what you've done in therapy and supercharge it. And then you do therapy afterwards to process what the hell just happened to you. But that's what we got to do. Otherwise, yeah, we just think life is hopeless. We despair and we don't want to feel that way. So we just reach for a fucking phone and doom scroll. There's plenty of alcohol out there, weed, whatever. Plenty of things people can do to not do the work, to feel good in the moment, to feel worse later over time. And it gets worse and worse and worse. And then, the worst case scenario is like that's why there's so many suicides, especially a lot of guys. We do it more than women do. We kill ourselves more than women do. So, yeah, hope's a tricky one these days, but there is a path. And there are pathway problems for sure, but there are strategies and tactics you can use. But it will require you to embrace the suck for a part of it when you're down in Hades. But there'll be times when things feel really good, and that should give you hope that, okay, I'm on the right track. I'm starting to feel better, or I've noticed this has changed. You probably see it all the time, this journey with people in the gym. Like they come in like yeah. And then it gets hard and they're like, fuck this. And then they start to get improvements and go, oh, wait. There's probably a similar dance with training that there is to psychotherapy, I would imagine. What do you think?
Well, you said a lot about the struggle of hopelessness. You don't have any experience with that, do you?
Oh, none. Yeah. I'm an alien. I've never experienced a human condition before.
So I went to, have you ever been to a Tony Robbins event?
Yes. Yeah. He came to Portland. It wasn't one of his full on ones, but he was there with Gary Vee and some other guys. He did he was the keynote. It was a whole 5 hours. Yeah. It's still pretty long, but his events are like a week or something. But they're great. It was just like a condensed version.
That was Get Motivated in 2017.
Yeah. That's about right.
Yeah, I was there.
Were you there too? Cool.
I came back. I mean, I had a blast. I mean, he's, seeing the guy who defined the genre. I mean, he created this industry of, he didn't create the self-help industry. I mean, his mentor was Jim Rohn, who is a beast when it comes to mental power. And, but he created the motivational speaker, experiential teaching piece that, now everyone is mic'd up and has the music and
jump up and down.
But it's important when you act out the state changes.
Yeah, it's the experiential part I was talking about.
I'm in the fitness industry, so we have a lot of really great minds. But if you've been to a conference where Martin Rooney is teaching, or who's the other guy? It'll come to me. He's another dynamic force. But Martin Rooney comes on, and it's like 3 echelons above a fitness talk. Like, changes the energy in the room for the rest of the day. And it's because he gets you up, and he creates a powerful felt experience in you. And I came back from that talk, and one of my friends was like, so did you, go in the back and buy all the programs, or, do everything? And I was like, I already have them all. And he looked at me, he's like, well, why did you go? I was like, because I want to feel good. Exactly what you said. Yeah. I said, I just like to see the best do his thing. And I mean, there is a felt truth of like, oh yeah, this is just a few hours of me doing everything I say I'm going to do in the other 164 hours of the week. And so I just went back and just started to apply more. Right. But it feels really good to feel good, and it's not to be understated. And you said something else powerful in your hope versus hopelessness rant. The pain of being in a bad place sometimes is the catalyst for you making a change. And that is enough. Like, just experiencing the disempowerment of, going bankrupt or getting divorced, or, being in between jobs or getting laid off. I had a friend of mine on 4th of July talk about starting his own business when he got laid off. And he shared like how he felt when he got laid off. And it was just 9-10 years ago now. He's a successful business. He's doing great. And he was still pissed about it. Like, he still was holding it, hurt. And I think everybody, that sense of, I'm not in control of what happens to me, that doesn't feel good. Yeah. And that memory of the pain was enough motivation for him to crush it today. Right. And I think embedded in that conversation is, if you can be with the frustration and the pain and then not numb out and escape.
Yes. Now, sit with it, feel it.
I'm human just like everyone else. And I have an incredible, and this is where I think being tough is not a good thing in many cases in life. There's mental toughness is important, but there's a point at which, that I've been many times, is I start to just expect a large amount of pain in my day to day. And whether I grit my teeth through it or I have a beer at the end of the day, I look back at parts of my life and I'm just shocked at how aggressively dysfunctional it was. Like,
to suppress it.
Just my whole life was just, I was a workaholic, so I didn't ever have to slow down and feel anything. And it objectively wasn't helping anything in my business. In fact, it was making my business worse. And I just couldn't stop moving for 1 second to evaluate anything.
Because if you stop, then what you're running from catches up.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So the friction is part of the process that changes us, and we've never been in a place where we have a greater ability to diffuse the counterforce of friction and pain, and the suffering comes from the act of ignoring the reality.
Yeah. We think that's the move, which, kind of makes sense at first. You don't want to feel it, but sitting there and feeling it, sort of detaching a little bit, trying to calm your nervous system, and then it passes. A lot of times we're not really afraid of the thing that's happening. We're afraid of the somatic experience that's happening. We're afraid of the emotion. I don't want to feel this. And then the thought about it's sort of like a secondary thing. If we didn't have emotions, like, just like, I don't know what it would be like. We just think maybe like Vulcans or something, and logical solutions to logical problems. But I think we're just, half the time we're just stressed to feel stressed. We don't want to feel the stress of stress or whatever it is. But if we sit there and feel it and see if we can tolerate it, we see it passes. And half the problem is I think we're afraid it's going to be like that forever. It's not going to go away. When will this go away? And the brain hates that, and the ego hates that. Wants it to stop now. It wants to be a time limited thing. If it could magically say in like 33 minutes, you'll stop feeling like this, people would be like, okay, fine. But if there's a not knowing about it, that sucks. But if you just sit there and feel it and breathe, it comes and goes in waves, it does pass. Might come back, it does pass. That's where breathing techniques work great, meditation, working out, talking about it, whatever. But being with it rather than trying to, like, you don't want to suppress and you want to obsess, right? Something in the middle. You don't want to shove it down. You don't want to like act it out and like stew in it. It's something right in the middle where you're just kind of holding it and letting it exhaust itself, if that makes sense. And that is mental toughness to me. That's fucking hard. It's actually easy to do what you were doing, like just plow through and say fuck it or whatever. It looks like the tough thing to do, but it's actually easy, but there's actually more pain on the back end.
And Azita Nahai has a book called Trauma to Dharma that I've been quoting a lot lately because I just read it. She says it takes 90 seconds to feel an emotion completely. You know, like you said, it can come back in 90 seconds too.
Probably will. Yeah.
Right. So it's not like it's over, but it's such a small amount of time if you stop running from it. And Leili Hormozi has a quote or a definition of confidence that I love, because you mentioned confidence in one of your definitions of hope. And she says, my definition of confidence is I'm willing to experience any emotion that comes up for me during my day.
That's a great quote. Yep. That's a really great quote. That's bravery. That's courage. Yeah.
And it's like, it sounds so simple, but Leila she's a machine. She's a leadership machine. She is a great cheerleader. She's a great mentor. She will fire you if you fuck around. She will ask you why your report is late for the 3rd day in a row and then fire you on the 5th day. Like, she is very warm and very cold and everything in between. And people people have underestimate her, but she's just a great leader. And the uncomfortable part of that is it's always fun to win, but it's really uncomfortable to do what winning requires, which is if somebody is weakening the team, take them out back and kill them. Like, and if they, when mentor, do not want to adapt, they don't want to be there, and they're gonna be happier at the next place. Mm-hmm. And so it seems so simple to just call out what is happening and move through it like an adult, and it's a superpower because most people can't. And I like you let it hit you. It's a great thing, and I'm still not good at it, but part of the controlling our bandwidth of emotions. These are things that knock us off agency, right? But if you're trying to control your experience, now it's easy to say, I don't want to feel bad. I don't want to deal with the bad emotions. But sometimes being witnessed and having a good day.
Witnessing's huge. Yeah.
There's a comedian who does the Two Bears, One Cave podcast with another guy named Bert. I forget which is. He's a funny guy. He's lost like 50 pounds, and he was talking about it to, I think, Neil Brennan. And he was saying like, "Oh, do you miss it?" And he's like, "No, I like eating Greek yogurt and fruit for breakfast. I actually felt like trash most of the time, and it was no real reason for it. Like, I would get done with a set, and it would be a great night. Well, let's celebrate with all you can eat ribs and, a fondue plate. And then the next night it would be he'd bomb, and like, it was crappy. Well, we should go out drinking." And it was like, no matter what, it was just to control how he felt. So he had a predictable emotional bandwidth every day was the same. And even if it made him sick, he just was like,
Not willing to feel the spectrum of emotions every day.
That's right. Good or bad. And so like letting people appreciate him and love him was part of it. He had to like learn how to do that. And then letting people like just tell him, well, I had a bad night, and it doesn't need to be a thing. And so I think a lot of times when people say like, oh, well, if you had a rough upbringing, it's like, well, you might be coping with things. You might not need a rough upbringing to not be able to tolerate certain types of social interaction, or
just be sensitive and something knocks you off course, or not. It's human condition.
That's right. And so all of these things come into play when you're talking about avoiding things. But essentially, I want to get back to this because it's important. You can avoid things. Like some people have drinks and it doesn't affect their social capital, their physical capital, their mental prowess, their personal relationships. And then there's people that have one and you're like, oh, that was too many, right? And he's off the rails again, or it just affects somebody's physiology differently.
Totally. Yeah.
And so you can have, you should, in my opinion, you should have some vices. You should have some.
Sorry, back to that again.
Yeah.
You don't trust people who don't have vices.
I don't trust people who don't have vices.
So every Mormon out there, you do not trust.
Yeah.
Well, they can eat junk food, so they're good. They're good to go.
Well, I worry for them, but even the people like, Grant Cardone, I don't know anything about him. I think he's a Scientologist. I have no idea what he's. I have no idea. But he talks about church. He talks about tithing a lot. He's a workaholic. He's a machine. He, is just on constantly driving forward, but he doesn't drink. He says he plays Call of Duty. I don't buy that. I would be very hard pressed to see if if you're listening to this podcast, find him online.
Find his gamer tag.
If you can get his gamer tag, and if you can bag him, or even just witness that he's actually playing video games. But it seems like he's like a whirlwind, kind of like Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah.
Who Gary Vaynerchuk at least drinks wine and goes to Jets games. Like he is very obviously a human.
He does stuff. Yeah.
I worry about people who are just grinders. And without, I won't do coffee. I won't smoke. I won't do a drink, a drop of alcohol. I won't do.
Oh yeah, like the tech biohacky type kind of guys.
It's like biohack for what?
Right, to live to 199.
Yeah,
but are you living? Cool, you've lived to the 199, but how was your life?
Yeah, there's lots of more. This is sort of germane to this topic because, finding and achieving goals or financial success or romantic success doesn't mean you're happy or satisfied or that you have hope. These things can all come and go. And then we've talked about some of the reasons why, but from you said it, agency is resourcefulness, and what percentage of you is listening to the victim, and what percentage of you, I'm quoting Azita Nahai's book. She talks about the dichotomy of the victim and the victor. So if you've been through something, if you've been traumatized, if you've experienced loss, then you will have, and you should have a story about it.
Of course.
And that sometimes that story can be overwhelming, and you get to be overwhelmed by it, and you should know it. You should feel it. You should be in pain. You should grief. Absolutely. And
that
grief,
shit out.
and grief is a process. It's not like you're like, oh, I figured out that I had a bad childhood and now I'm done with it.
I wish.
So, but the victim is attached to not having a choice, and the victor is attached to having a voice.
There we go. Yeah, it's sort of like being self-led in IFS. You try to lead from your highest self and work with the wounded parts and not let them take the driver's seat.
And that's right. Yes, and we'll get into the how to do that when we talk about agency. So we're going to break these down into pieces, because we've been talking for a long time and we haven't really sunk into any of these, because I think that there's a more precise way to label goal, a more precise way to understand pathways,
mm-hmm.
and a more empowered way to develop agency or understand your own relationship with agency. And it doesn't have to be super complicated or be something you have to adapt through a force of will to embrace. I think a lot of it is in how you look at it, and versus how these things occur to you as a lot of how you relate, and
mm-hmm.
well, as all of how you relate. And if you don't know that some things are possible, then you are
hopeless.
You're what?
Hopeless.
Well, you're non-resourced. So I'll give you an example of this, and then maybe we'll pitch it to the next episode. But social capital, the idea of social capital,
like friends,
your network, and who's willing to support you in whatever it is that you need support from them from.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I didn't know what any of that was. I read a book called Never Eat Alone by, wow, the fact that I can't remember this author's name will be haunting to me, because it was such an impactful book. It'll come to me when I'm telling the story. But he basically, he's from a blue collar family in Pittsburgh, from Pittsburgh, and his dad is a steel worker, and his dad is super humble, and he remembers his dad. One Christmas, his dad sees he wants to get his kid a bike, and he sees a bicycle in a dumpster that's in good condition. So he goes, knocks on the door, asks the family if that bike was put there on purpose, and if he can have it and give it to his kids. And they say yes, of course. And so now he gets a bike. And his dad, knowing the power of networking and social mobility, when it comes time for Keith Ferrazi to start the 6th grade, he goes to the plant manager and he says, "Your son goes to a private middle school. I want my son to go to that same middle school, and I can't afford it. Can you talk to them, about letting me in for some, sponsored deal or financial deal?" And the plant manager says, "Sure." And so because of that, Keith goes to a private school, and then has the experience of seeing how socially networked
right.
The upper middle class is.
Playing a different game.
A completely different game. And he goes and works at a country club, and he sees that rich people are constantly getting support from other people.
Yep.
They're talking about business. Hey, I'm starting a program where, it's lawn maintenance. Oh, great. You can come, me and I'll get a neighbor involved, and
social proof, all that stuff.
Yeah. And so they just get buy-in so much faster.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so he watches this go down, and then he starts to realize that, if you ask people for favors, they want to help you.
Yeah, generally. Yeah.
Especially in my mindset, my lack of connected, my very blue collar or whatever the fuck it was that I grew up in. My mindset was I couldn't ask for something that I couldn't pay back, because then that would just be asking for something. Right. And so I couldn't ask for a favor I couldn't return. Well, that would be most favors, for where I began. So if you have that mindset, that you can't ask for help and you don't even know that you can, then you are completely cut off from a very simple and obvious way to gain access to supportive relationships, financial resources, networking information resources.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just an example of the agency issue of like, it's like turning a light on in a room that it's in your house. It was there the whole time, but you didn't know anything was in there because there was no lights. Now you can explore this room and what's going on in here. And it just completely opens up the world in a different way. And particularly social connections is huge. So, but that's an example of how just because of our reference points and our stories and our structure of our lives, we are cutting ourselves off from resourcefulness, and has everything to do with our beliefs and our perception, and nothing to do with what's actually going on around us.
Yeah, that goes back to our relationships episode too. How important those are.
That's right. So over the next few episodes, what I want to do is I want to dive into goals and make them a little bit more, give the audience a more empowering way to come up with goals. And even if you're not a goal setting person, which many successful people aren't, they're more process oriented. That's totally cool too. But how to do goals from a process perspective and from a vision board perspective, if you're that person, and to make it a little bit less scary to identify a goal, you know. And I also want to talk about pathways, possibilities, and a simple framework for those. And that we could talk about strategies all day long, but we could take the pressure off people with giving them some pathway ideas, and then really cut into this idea of agency and how we find our voice, how we resource ourselves, and how we listen to ourselves when we are in our victim story and trying to recreate the past or living in the past, whether we know it or not. And because of that, we are contributing to our overall lack of hope in the process, in wherever we're at in our life, even if we're otherwise a successful and, somewhat put together person.
Makes sense. Yeah, we'll keep pulling the thread on this one. Feel free to share this if it's helped anybody. Send it to one person, and we'll keep on trucking.
That's right. So go listen to Island and tell us what you think.
Also a good band. All right. Until next week, we're out.
Boom.